Thank you so much, Alan, for joining us on a podcast with Dawdle on this Friday evening. So, what are you up to on this Friday evening? And how
Well,
do
I
you manage
just
to
got
take out time?
I just got off a plane, my friend. I was in Dubai this week launching Unlimited Awesome with our partners in the Right Arms Project, which is a network marketing company for digital products. And so did this huge launch. It was fantastic, a very successful launch. And then I flew home today. I just got home a couple hours ago. I got off the plane from Abu Dhabi and here I am.
That's superb. So, Alan, before we start with the questions and all the topics, would love to hear from you your journey so far.
Yeah.
Your career, your contributions, maybe in a couple of minutes.
Sure. So I'll just kind of maybe start at my undergrad. I went to University of Guelph and I have a degree in molecular biology. And during that time while I was at school, I also DJed. I was DJing at the bar and nightclub on campus, and so that was fun. And then when I graduated, my mom always wanted me to be a doctor, and so I applied to med school and I got accepted to med school. And then I volunteered at a hospital. I was like, oh, I don't like this. I don't want it. So I decided not to do that. And then yeah, I ended up becoming a pharmaceutical rep. And so I sold pharmaceuticals for a few years, and then I was always DJing on the weekends as well. So it was pretty fun. Then we started a couple of different companies. We started a nutraceutical company, a real estate holding company, which we had for many years, a hostel, like a traveling hostel at a ski resort. So it was super fun. But I always had the DJing in the background. And then we had a medical billing company, which was our main thing after the pharmaceuticals. And just one day, my daughter was very young and I was working 18-hour days. And I just said, I don't want to do this anymore. So we closed down the company and I just became a full-time DJ. And what that meant was I got to spend all day and most nights with my kids, and then I would go and perform at night. They didn't know that I was that I had left. So it was fun. It was great, and I did that for about almost 20 years. We added audiovisual services, so we did like screens and microphones and big productions and stuff like that. So it was DJ and production. And one day in 2010, a guy sent me a YouTube video, and the YouTube video was of this guy DJing on a piece of glass, a giant see-through piece of glass. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. So I tracked down the guy who made it. His name is Pablo Martin, and I made a deal to partner with him to build Emulator, which became the world's first multi-touch application for the music industry. And so, people don't realize 2010, the iPad wasn't out yet. The iPhone had come out, but the iPad itself wasn't out yet. And so we launched it at a TED Talk, and it became really famous. Our first video got, millions and millions of views, got 8 million views. So it became famous. We started working with big artists. We worked with Linkin Park, Infected Mushroom, Morgan Page, worked with all sorts of incredible artists, J Frog in the band Scooter in Germany, and traveled all over the world DJing, performing, and also showing off this thing. So during the day, we would do demos for all the DJ stores. And then at night, we would bring the DJs out to come and play with it. So, and we'd play in a club or something to get videos and photos. Anyway, long story short, we had an opportunity to sell that company in 2014. So we made the move. And right before that, I had tried virtual reality for the first time, and it just blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, virtual reality is the best thing I've ever seen. And it's the future of communications. So we went from interactive touchscreens to virtual reality. And so we filmed, 360 videos, we built AR apps, VR apps, we built all sorts of things, hundreds of different things. And then a few years later, we acquired the technology that ended up becoming the Metaverse engine, which is a 3D game engine on the browser, because we realized that two things. One, it was too hard to make these things. And two, none of them worked on the browser. So, everybody talks about the term metaverse being kind of this future state of the internet where everybody can go around and, whether you're on VR or computer or your phone, doesn't matter, but you can go and communicate with people all around the world. Almost like, imagine if Fortnite was just part of the internet, right? Every website you could just walk inside and go in instead of just a scroll up and down, you could go in. So I think the future state of the internet can be that. And so it's very exciting. So that's what we worked on for that. We called our company Metaverse in 2016. We filed the registered trademark. So we have the trademark for the term Metaverse spelled METAVRSE. And so we did that for a decade. But what happened was along the way, right in between that point where we were doing the DJ stuff and the Metaverse stuff, our daughter invented sandals that leave a heart-shaped tan line on top of your feet called the Love Sandal. And when she was 10 years old, she invented these shoes, became really successful. And it was kind of watching her do that and, having two businesses simultaneously that kind of overlapped in technology. I was like, well, why aren't we teaching, entrepreneurship and innovation and financial literacy and marketing and communication skills. Why don't the schools teach that at a younger age? You know,
Yes.
there's obviously there's courses for that. You can go take entrepreneurship in university,
Yes.
but typically what happens is the people teaching it have never been entrepreneurs. Shocking.
Right.
But you know, and those who are really truly entrepreneurial wouldn't be teaching at a university, they'd be building something. So that's what it came to. And so we decided to build a new education system called Unlimited Awesome to foster entrepreneurship and innovation, and at least the innovative mindset, right? Because one thing that I saw coming was if virtual reality, you know, could help people train better, there's going to be a very big shift in how we do work, because AI, robotics, and automation are going to automate out a lot of jobs.
Yes.
It will create more opportunities, maybe not in the form of work that we know of it today. Maybe it will be in the form of creating new value. So, you know, innovation and entrepreneurship is the job of the future, in our opinion. And so, why don't we prepare people for the things they're going to need? And we call them the 6 castles of success. Perseverance. So, under perseverance, you have like mindfulness, gratitude, positivity, goal setting, right? Creative problem solving and critical thinking. So, under that would be how to view sources of information critically and how to think entrepreneurially and how to be innovative. And then economic responsibility. So, being able to read a financial statement, all these things. So, social impact. What does it mean to work with people around you and be sociable? Teamwork and mentorship. How do you work as a group? And how do you, you know, cohesively? And then also, how do you seek mentorship? And one of the things we have is an AI mentor as well. So we have human mentors, and then we've got an AI mentor tutor that works with you. Last one is environmental responsibility and sustainability. Without that, we really need to take care of this planet and all living things on it, not just us humans wrecking stuff. That rounds out Unlimited Awesome, and we just were in Dubai announcing the launch of that this week. So it's been a crazy week. It's a good time for a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Thank you so much, Alan. And when I kind of, was hearing to this, I was thinking that, it's a very, kind of very natural flow that you have basically maintained while you are transitioning in your career. It was nothing like planned or something like this. You did what your heart told you,
Yep.
and you gave preference to your family, and then you gave preference to what you like, rather than kind of jumping the bandwagon and kind of doing something which, and then you experimented and then thought that this is going to be the change. Say you experimented with
So
virtual
we
reality, and then
experimented with virtual reality. We
yeah.
experimented with AI. We experimented with computer vision. We experimented with blockchain. And it wasn't just us experimenting in a lab. We were building this stuff for some of the world's largest companies. Our client lists are like MasterCard, Siemens, Samsung, Microsoft, Wipro, JP Morgan, Pearson Education, you name it. We've had some massive customers, Mars Wrigley, Bell, Rogers, Telus in Canada, T-Mobile, Deutsche Telekom, Qualcomm, all sorts of partners and clients. It's been an incredible learning experience for us, but we also leveraged their trust in us to build these new technologies to test what works, what doesn't work. Because something, you know, some things you try, you're like, hey, this is a great idea. And you go down the path and you're like, you know, didn't create enough value or just
Yes.
wasn't adopted. And technology is like that. You know, in order to be successful in technology, you have to iterate. You have to go
Yes.
to the market, listen to the customers, figure out what they want, and then fix it and go back or scrap it. With Metaverse, we really had a mindset of there was only 3 things we were looking for in a product, and that was it needed to be repeatable. So
Yes.
the customer needed to buy it more than once. It needed to be scalable, meaning if we had 10 people on it or 10,000, it didn't cost us any more. We just made more margin. And the last one, it had to generate recurring revenues. So it had to be something that people would buy and use on a monthly or ongoing basis. So that was, and we ended up building a 3D game engine on the browser. So that is repeatable, scalable, and generates recurring revenue.
Absolutely, Alan. On this, my first question to you is that since you have already worked with a lot of big clients in spaces like AI, Metaverse, and all this technology, from your experience, what are the most common business challenges which a
Mm.
leader faces while adopting an emerging technology?
I think selling, you know, sometimes people build technology for the sake of technology, and that's fine if you're in a research lab and you're doing that. But what you want to do is you want to go and solve a problem. So you have to have a customer that has a problem or a concept that you're like, okay, I think this customer will have this problem, and take the technology or build towards the problem. And I think too many people build technology and then try to find a solution for it or
Yes.
a sales channel for it. Whereas we tried, you know, marketing, retail, training, we tried collaboration. We did all sorts of things. We did entertainment. We tried all these different verticals because we didn't know what vertical to be in. And so we tried a bunch of different things. And it was, some people say, oh, it's don't spread yourself too thin, and that makes a lot of sense. But when you don't know where the market is, doing that to understand where the market is and then narrowing down on the things that you do best. So we ended up like did all these different things, and we ended up with training, marketing, and retail. And the reason why is because training and marketing and retail use, if we make one 3D asset, let's say for example a smartphone, we work with Samsung, and so you make a one asset, they give us the CAD models, and it explodes out in a view, right? So all of the pieces explode out, and you can look at it from any angle. So that's actually incredibly useful for training. You can show people how the phone works, features of the phone, that type of thing. It's also the same thing you would use for marketing. Exactly the same animations and everything, just change, maybe they change the wording, the verbiage, right? So instead of teaching somebody how to sell it, you're teaching them the features of it. And then retail, you can just use that on your website as a retail tool. So
Yes.
that was kind of where we landed with the real utility of 3D on the browser.
Absolutely. And this was my next question, like, is that, in your journey, in your metaverse journey, could you tell us a few business problems across the industries? You talked about retail, you talked about education, you talked about training. What are those business challenges that you solve, for various industries?
It's so varied. So for example, in retail, there's no challenge there. But if you're an online retailer, let's say you're Amazon, right? When was the last time you went on Amazon? Like most people go on once a week, maybe once every, a couple days, once, you need something you order, right? When was the last time you invited somebody to go shopping with you at Amazon? Never. It's not a multi-user, it's not an experience that you would share with somebody. You maybe in your house, you say, you pull the computer over and get which one you want,
Yes.
but it's not like a social shopping experience where we created a virtual mall where you could go, like a video game where you could go from store to store and like look at different products in the store and engage with either an AI service bot, an actual robot, what do you call it, agent, or a live agent, right? So it had this kind of gamified feel, and there's billions of gamers that are used to that interactions. So imagine that, and instead of scrolling and just ordering something that you want off Amazon from a size list, you can go and experience brands, and it's less about I call Amazon kind of procurement. It's really just the ruthless procurement of goods, right? You go there, you get a pair of socks. You're not going to go shopping for a pair of socks. You just want to buy the socks. But if you're looking at maybe a new necklace or some fashion or the latest greatest electronics, you want to touch them, feel them, interact with them. When you click the product, you want to be maybe in the product room, right? And that whole room is themed for that product. So it's more branding, marketing, retail combined, right? So that's something that's really exciting.
I think this has got a great application for real estate as well.
It does, but there's lots of people doing real estate. There's Matterport tours. That's one thing we stayed away from real estate because the market is so saturated. Nobody's really nailed that, but you can go and do virtual tours now. They all exist. So, in real estate, you can do pre-visualization, so before it's built,
Yeah.
or after it's built. So, it's a market we tried. We did some stuff, but then I realized it was a very saturated market, and it was very hard to find the exact niche for that. But sure, it could be used for real estate for sure. We just
And
didn't do
it's
it.
kind of, I'm just thinking like, would it find an application in kind of virtual tourism? So let's suppose somebody based out in Dubai.
No, it
No.
turns out nobody does that.
Yeah.
I would say 10 years ago, I would have said, yeah, that's a potential use case. But I've seen so many people try XR and travel. It doesn't work ever.
Yeah.
Turns out people just want to go there. They don't want to go to a virtual version of something.
Yeah. So retail we
I've never
covered.
seen anything successful in that field yet.
Absolutely. Because in
But I've
India,
seen
I'm
so many
seeing,
people try.
yeah, in India, I'm seeing it, a couple of startups in which, so they will give you virtual darshans or virtual visit to the temples
Yeah, I get
or to
that.
the
How
religious
many people are
places.
using it?
That's
How much
something
money
that,
are they making?
yeah, yes, right. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen hundreds of startups do that. Like literally hundreds, if not thousands of startups do that. And none of them have been successful that I've seen. And maybe I'm wrong. If somebody's watching this, message me and let me know that I'm wrong. I'd be happy to be wrong. Then at least there'd be a business model in it, but I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. So retail is done, training
Hotels,
is done.
hotels,
Yeah.
hotels for
Hotels, yes.
tours of a hotel room or interactive hotel tours for sure. But that's real. I would file that under real estate, really.
Yeah, that will fall under real estate, right? I think it has a great application for education industry as such, like what you're doing at Unlimited Awesome.
It really does. We've been able to decrease training times by 40% and training costs by 40%. For some of our clients. And some people have different metrics for how they measure things. Being able to train people quicker, it turns out if you put, let's say, for example, this speaker,
Yes.
I want to train somebody on how to fix this speaker. Maybe it's a maintenance center, right? And I want to train it how to use it. So I have a 3D version of this, right, which I got from my CAD, my manufacturing models,
Yeah.
and I can look at it from all angles. I can look at top, bottom, right. So I can look at it this way and say, oh, there's power, and maybe if I turn it this way, a little pop up says, this is the power button, this is volume, whatever they are. And then, so I can spin it in any direction. And then it says, oh, step one, how to open it up.
Yes.
So pull the rubber cover off, undo these two
Yes.
screws. Once you do the two screws, there's a little latch here. So how do you normally that would just be a PDF manual. Now imagine it's not a little Bluetooth speaker, but it's an entire medical machine. And you want to teach people how to use it, how to fix it, and how to repair and replace anything on it. So let's say, for example, you have a burnt out power module, right? So you do some diagnostics, and then you're like, well, how do I fix this thing? I don't have the manual with me. And even if I get the manual as a PDF, it's like 500 pages of PDF manual. It's
Absolutely.
terrible. Or I can go step by step in this 3D thing, look at it and go, oh, these two screws need to come out. And I turn it around and it automatically says, here, you got to do this, unplug it, do this, these 4 screws, this thing that I know, unplug these 2 cables and then slide it out, put the new one in, plug the cables in reverse and do the 2 screws and put the rubber cover in. So it turns out it's shockingly effective for that. Now, the challenge of it is that it's expensive to build still. 3D is still a complicated thing. It's much easier to build a PDF. It's much cheaper, but it's getting less and less expensive. So you can now, with AI, you can take that PDF manual, it can parse it out into the step guide. And then there's another AI that we use that can take a CAD model and build it into a 3D interactive thing that opens up and stuff. It's still manual, a lot of the work. So it's not automatic, and it is expensive to do up front, but it's relative. When I say expensive, it's in the tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars per product, depending on the complexity. But if that
But it depends on
saves
the
you,
ROI.
but if it saves you tens to hundreds of millions in training
Right.
or service problems, right? So it's all relative.
I'm thinking there must be some applications in the aviation industry as well because,
100%. So that it's funny you say that because there's a lot of people that went into aviation because it's just a no-brainer, right? You get the how to fix the engine, and so
yes.
we did some stuff in aviation, but it was more in like crew training and stuff like that. It wasn't in the maintenance, because that's a whole industry, and you kind of have to very much specialize in that thing. Right? We wanted to be a general game engine. But what we wanted to do was show people how to use it in different markets. And so that would have been, we actually built an engine, exploded view of an engine and stuff for demo purposes. If you want to go into something and be the experts in that, you kind of have to be the experts in that, right?
Yes.
You have to say we're going to be the experts in, aircraft maintenance in
Yes.
3D or in virtual reality or XR.
And what about healthcare?
Healthcare. For 3D technology, you can do things like we did, like training people on how to use and fix machines. You could do virtual reality training. Let's say, for example, of a surgery. Maybe I have a camera over a surgery, so I can like put the glasses on and see exactly, watch a surgeon do a surgery. It's a point of view that you could never get without this technology. Like you can't stand looking over the surgeon. Only maybe you can have 2 people, one on either side, looking over, watching, or maybe you can have a camera with a video screen. But being in VR, you see the depth, you see everything. It's far more involved. Your brain accepts it more as real than just a video. The other part of it is you can then say, okay, you watch the video. Now here, with your own bare hands, you can pick up tools and you can do the surgery in virtual.
Yes.
So it's interactive, and that would be made in a game engine like Metaverse. And so then, you would have to make hands and a scalpel and whatever and a body, and and then be able to cut into it and do that. So you have to make the physics for all that. But then you could train doctors to be surgeons. You could train
Yes.
nurses to be nurses. You could train orderlies to make the beds and how to do things properly. And, and that's medical. You could also use it for calming patients. For example,
Yes.
if you're going to have a patient go into surgery, you can put this thing on their head and you can take a 360 camera on a bed and wheel it through the hallway for kids, let's say, and it into the surgical room. And so that they can see what's going to happen before their surgery. The day before, they get to visualize this is what's going to happen. You go down this hall, you're going to go over here, you're going to go in here, and you're going to have a mask put on your face and you're going to fall asleep. Then when the kid goes to surgery the next day, they're super calm, or it doesn't have to be a kid, it can be anybody. They're super calm, they're relaxed because they've already been down that journey. They know it's peaceful, it's fine. so they don't get stressed. And the cause of a major cause of complications in surgery and surgical suites is stress. When people get stressed out, the body is reacting in a negative way to surgery. Surgery is already invasive enough on your body, but if you can be calm during it, your outcomes are much higher. And it's been proven. People play music in surgical suites and stuff like that. So that's one cool use case that I saw. Another one is training people on how to do job interviews. Let's say I'm a manager and I'm interviewing somebody and I can put VR on, I can interview the person. The cool thing about this is I think they call it body swaps. I
Yes.
can look at the person, I can, have a conversation with them, and then I get to sit on the other side in the other person's eyes and watch me interact with me.
Yeah.
Right? So it's the only technology that in the world that allows you to do that. You can do it with a camera. Obviously, you can videotape yourself doing it. It's not the same as doing it in a virtual space because you're there, the person's there, you can see their emotions. Imagine having to fire somebody, right? So you can train people to feel empathetic, to know what it's like to be on the other side,
Yes.
and that they've kind of called it virtual reality the ultimate empathy machine because it allows you to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, literally, in somebody else's eyeballs, not their shoes, but their eyes.
Yes.
And so anything where you want somebody to get a hands-on, like direct view of the activity and hands-on training. So another huge one that's just starting to emerge now. I mean, it was just hard to make and really didn't have a lot of uptake until now, but trades training. So things like being an automotive mechanic. They've been
Yes.
able to take 2 years of automotive training and bring it down to 2 months. Think about that. From 2 years to
Yes.
2 months, because you get to work on it 8 hours a day. You have a tutor there. You have step-by-step instructions. You can do it at your own speed until you get it right. You don't go to the next one. So you get 100% on everything. You have to pass each level. And it turns out you get people like about 80% to trained. And then they have to go and do the real thing because you got to feel it. And, there's a feel to auto mechanics and HVAC. Alexa, stop. There's a feel to all of these things.
Got it. So my next question to you, Alan, is some of the brands have jumped into this bandwagon of metaverse and related stuff, but they fail to see the right ROI. What execution or strategic missteps are holding them back as per you?
I think that the interesting thing is it depends on which industry you're looking at. For example, factories where you need people to do repetitive things, using augmented reality glasses really does help and it does create ROI. But using augmented reality for a marketing initiative, marketing is one of those things that maybe the ROI is not necessarily directly in an uplift of sales, but maybe it is in the fact that you got media. For example, some of the stuff we did with Mars Wrigley, we actually created a whole thing called the Juicyverse, which was a whole virtual world where you went in and they saw not only an increase in revenues, but also they saw an increase in time spent on the website. So instead of a normal website, which is like 30 seconds to a minute, we had like 13 minutes dwell time, meaning the consumers were running around surrounded by the Starburst brand for 13 minutes on average. And that's a long time for things. So the other thing is people don't, especially in marketing, they don't really tend to think about the big ROI, which is news, free media and non-paid media. So, if, for example, with the Juicyverse, we got a ton of different media and, millions and millions of impressions that were non-paid. So, that's a benefit. And so ROI comes in many different formats, but I think the key with building any of these solutions is that you must have a clear path and know what your ROI goals are and then measure against them. Because far too often people just do it because it's cool and that's fun. But really what you want is you want to have a direct ROI before you build it, so that you build it knowing, okay, we want to increase sales by 11%. We want to increase dwell times by 25%. We want to do this very specific things that you can track. And then if you don't hit those metrics, which, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. But if you don't hit those metrics, then you can go back and say, why? Why didn't we hit them? What could we have done better? And then you deploy a secondary time. So with technology, always in technology, you have this kind of weird thing where the first iteration sometimes doesn't work and you have to iterate. And technology is always this kind of constant iteration, make it better and better and better. And usually by the third time you got it right and it's nailed. So, that's one thing about our company is that we've done so many of these projects. We know what's going to work, what's not going to work. For example, one of our clients, their legal team got involved and their legal team kept putting roadblocks. So rather than just register and go into the experience, to register, select a box that said you agree to the terms and conditions. Then there was like a age restriction box, and then there was another box, and all these pop-ups came up. And every time you have a pop-up like that, it decreases the number of
Yes.
people who get through by 50%. So if you have 4 pop-ups, you start with 200 people, you just
Yes.
went from to 100 people to 50 people to 25 people. And we tried to explain this to them, and they didn't listen, and it literally exactly as we said would happen happened. And so, you went from 100,000 to, to 50 to 25 to 12,500, because every roadblock cuts your number of people that go through the thing in half. So the key with augmented reality, virtual reality, any really interactive experience is just get the people in there. If you notice, when you go to like a mall or an event where there's like an activation, they let you in the activation first. You do the activation and then you register at the end. Because if you have to register at the beginning, it's less people. Digital is even worse. You must make sure that the people have a great experience, and then give them a value, and then ask them for their email or their contact information or whatever.
And what are your views on these all, digital sales rooms and all these kind of a concepts, right?
I think
Where
they're great. I've seen some really cool ones for cars where you can walk around and do that. But I think one of the problems that everybody's avoided, because it's not easy to do, is the fact that if I went into a showroom, a real physical showroom, if I want to go buy a car and I go into a showroom and I start walking around and there are no staff to help me, and like, if you're going to spend $100,000 or $500,000 or $1 million on a virtual showroom, why aren't you including staff? And it could be an actual human represented as an avatar, let's say, or it could be an AI. But regardless, there has to be somebody there. And I think,
Yes.
a lot of brands forget that. They build these huge things and they assume that you're just going to wander around there by yourself. And that's missing, you're missing the very essence of sales, and that's having people there to help you. And I've seen so many of these experiences. There was a huge bank that put a thing on Decentraland, and you walked around this thing and it was like, okay, there was a tiger there and there was like, some videos and some, some graphics. But then I was like, well, now what? Like, what's the point of
Yes.
this? What do I do here? And there was nobody there. And think about how cheap it would be to just have some people there. And if I walk in and I cross the threshold, an alert, I'm in, let's say, Bangladesh, and I pull up my phone and I say, oh, nice to meet you. And you walk around and I'm there to guide you through this experience. This is customer service 101. You wouldn't build a physical store and not have any staff in it. And so why would you build a virtual store and not have any staff in it? That's the biggest challenge that I've seen that people keep messing up.
And what we have seen is that just after COVID, I think physical interactions have gained a lot of value as well.
Yeah, it turns
Right?
out we're
No
humans
one
and we
can
love
meet
each
face to
other.
face these days. Yeah.
We need more love and
Yes.
communications and collaborations in this world.
Now the next thing is that is around AI adoption, Alan, and a lot of these companies, if you see, they start implementing AI, but it gets stuck in pilot projects. It doesn't get scaled up. What, according to you, are the major roadblocks, or the mistakes which company do while they're implementing AI within their processes?
We haven't done a lot of AI deployments for corporations, but I do run an AI mastermind group called Brain Juice, and one of our members is a woman named Sol Rashidi. And Sol has been the chief AI officer of IBM. So she's deployed about 200 AI projects for some of the world's largest companies. I think it's the same thing that happens with every technology deployment. There's 3 things you need to service when it comes to enterprise. You need to service the tech. So the CTO's team, to make sure that you have security and privacy and all of those things, and the technology stack integrates well with the technology. You have the finance team that are always, concerned about money and making sure that you stay within budget and you know that sort of thing. And then you have the legal team. And unless you have consensus by all 3 teams, you're not going anywhere with a deployment. And so we call it, prototype purgatory, or, it's one of those things where you build prototypes and it's easy to build a prototype. You get it and people go, wow, this is amazing. It's working. It's generating revenue or whatever it is, decreasing costs. It's a whole other thing to take that and build it into the operations of a large company. So most of these startup projects fail because they don't plan from the very beginning that if it's successful, what does it look like to roll this into the operations? So going from innovation department to operations department is where most of these things fall down. And so my advice would be, 1, get CEO buy-in from the very top. If the CEO is not buying into this, you're not going to get this thing going. So you need CEO buy-in. Second thing you need is, from day one, you need to plan with the operations team that's going to take this over. So normally you're dealing with let's say a big company, right? So you're dealing with Microsoft. You'll deal with like an innovation team that's very siloed, and all they're doing is looking for innovative things to bring in, and then they'll bring it into the different operations groups. If you don't have somebody from operations there from the very beginning to understand how this will work in their world, you're kind of setting yourself up for failure, because even though it might be wildly successful as a demo, it may fall down simply because people don't want it, because they see it as too much work, or people get people, if it's not their idea, they don't want to push it through, type of thing. So I think planning for going from innovation to operations from day one is the key, but always get CEO buy-in, then plan for the transfer, and then have a plan. If this is successful, what is our next steps to bring this to the organization?
Yeah. And also making some change champions across the organization, which makes people feel that it is their
And
idea.
have
It's not.
multiple champions. This is something we
Yes.
learned the hard way. If you have one great champion, that's cool. They'll get you involved. They'll get you the sale. And what happens when they leave? And it happens
Yes.
every time. You're in an organization, you've got this champion, 3 years, you've been working together, and they take a different job because, typically if you're good at what you do, you've made them look really good, and they either get promoted or they go to another job because people are poaching them because they saw what you did. They're like, wow, you did this amazing thing, in innovation. We want to pull you over. So I think having multiple stakeholders and multiple champions is key, but also, again, having CEO buy-in from the beginning is essential.
Now I will, kind of ask you questions as an investor, you as an investor. Is that as an investor, what are the common red flags that you see in a startup solution which may not be addressing a true market need?
So I'll just give you some of the red flags. I've been a judge for the South by Southwest Pitch Awards for 3 years. I've been a mentor at Techstars. I've had my own accelerator. I've been judging officially startups for years. There's a couple things that are red flags. One, they don't have a proper video that explains in a very short amount of time what they do. 2, their website is missing pages or there's something wrong on the website. 3, they have a deck and no product demo. 4, the product demo fails, which, look, if it fails once, okay, I get that. But if it fails consistently, or maybe they don't even have a product demo, these are red flags for me. Some guy I met recently, he has this really cool technology for pulling carbon out of the air. And I do believe that he has the technology, but when he sent me a deck, the images on the deck were AI generated. And so when I zoomed in to read the context, because I was like, oh, that's a really great graphic. Like the graphic was amazing. I wanted to zoom in and read it, and it was all gibberish. And I'm thinking, so you couldn't even take the time to make a graphic that represents your product. You just used AI slop for it. For that reason, I'm out. Yeah, the red flags for me are like, does the website match what they're doing? Who's on the team? A team is really important. Usually, if it's an early startup, what I look for, honestly, I look for really passionate people over time. We don't really typically invest in startups unless we take a controlling role, meaning like 51% or greater. And the people that I've done those deals with, they've become partners, and we've been partners for years, like, decades kind of thing. So it's really one of those things that you want to look for passionate people that are super passionate about what they do, that have been pushing really hard. Maybe they haven't been paid properly, which, another red flag is like when a CEO of a startup is paying themselves more than everybody else in the startup. Even myself now, in my different startups, I get paid a fraction of what the rest of the team gets paid, right? Like the product team gets paid first, and then, if we have the enterprise sales, the sales team gets paid, and, everybody gets paid more than me, which is fine because I own the equity. My goal is to increase the value of the equity. My job as CEO of a company is to increase the value of the company for the shareholders, right?
Yes.
And so that's the goal. And so you can you don't have to get paid so much up front. And there's a really big red flag when you have startup founders who are paying themselves an enormous amount of money. And I've seen this time and time again with VC-backed startups where the venture capital will put in money. They'll say, hey, you're looking for $1 million at a 10 million valuation. You know what we're going to do? We're going to give you 10 million at a 50 million valuation. Ooh, it's going to be great. And you're thinking, wow, that's less dilution, more money. And then, they really convince you to spend a lot of money. Give yourself a raise, pay your staff more, hire, really burn the money, burn it. And their goal is to put more money in at the next round, right? And hopefully the round doubles. So let's say I put 10 at 50, maybe I want to put another 10 at 100, right? But, that's the goal. But what happens more than not is that there's a down round. I gave
Yes.
you 10 at 50. You didn't hit your targets. Now your company is only worth 40, and I'm going to put another 10 in and take a down round. So the founders themselves get diluted down quite a bit. And then there ends up being such dilution in these tranches of investment that there's no incentive in it for the actual entrepreneur anymore. If you end up being diluted to 5% of your company, you're gonna be like, do I even bother anymore? Like, unless you're getting paid a massive salary, then you're like, is it worth it anymore? No. And so you've disincentivized the passion of the original founders. And I see this all the time. I wrote an article called The Founder Venture Capital Paradox, meaning VCs say they will invest in founders and then they take all the founders' control away from them. This is a problem.
And there's one thing, which comes to my mind again and again is that, it's talking about 1950s, 60s when people used to build businesses. There was a different way on approach.
Yeah, you built a business through sales and revenue. Now,
Yeah.
all of the accelerators, Techstars, Y Combinator, their goal is just to get you to raise more capital.
That's
Raise
the
more
problem.
capital.
Yes.
And it is the VC model, right? So it's,
Yeah.
because every time you raise another round, typically you double or triple the valuation, right? Which if it's going on that trajectory, then it's great. If it's not going on the exponential trajectory, and this is why I think a lot of people see venture capital as first money or, easy money, and it's not easy money. It's actually the worst money you can take, because as soon as you take their money, you have a gun to your head saying you must hit these targets. And if you don't hit these targets, you're going to be diluted out and we're going to take over your company. And typically the venture capital company will want board seats. They'll want control. They'll want leverages. They'll want different factors. They'll want factors where they get like 2x multiplier. So if they put in 10 million, they got to get 20 million before anybody else gets paid. There's ratchets. There's all sorts of little things, and the devil's in the details with those deals. And so one of the things that we're doing with Unlimited Awesome is we're investing in student startups, but it's a very, very clean term sheet. It's $10,000 for 10% equity, and it's all done under a safe note. And so it's $10,000 for 10%, and no ratchets, no clawbacks, none of this dirtiness. And then we also have further on investment from our community, and it's all clean term sheets, no more of this nonsense, because it's all those ratchets and everything. So this is why venture capital is a little broken. They are only aiming for $1 billion and up companies, unicorns or decacorns or higher. The problem is that most acquisitions don't happen over $1 billion. They happen under $100 million. So our goal is not to build a bunch of decacorns and unicorns. Maybe they will come, maybe they won't, I don't know. But the goal is to get student startups to maybe a $5 million exit or a $10 million exit or $1 million exit. That is a life-changing amount of money for students around the world. We're not betting on the next Uber. Look, if that happens and it becomes the next Uber or the next, Airbnb, great, wonderful. We'll support them through that. But the goal is to just get them to the point where they can have a nice exit, take that money off the table and live a wonderful life, right? We can create 1 million millionaires, if you would. And that's better than creating 1 billionaire.
Absolutely.
So in my opinion.
Absolutely. Completely resonate with this. And now I will come back again to the tech space. And the question here is around space tech. And I know, you are kind of passionate about it. Tell me your views.
For those of you listening, I was doing the Spock symbol, Nanu Nanu. I love the idea of space for a couple of reasons. One, I never really paid too much attention to space, and then these guys, Nick and Enzo, they started a company called H-Star Space. Enzo's gone on to do some other things, but the company is really around building their own rockets and technology for the space industry. And at first, when they asked me to join their advisory board, I just said no. I was too busy, and they just kept coming back every 6 months and with updates, and they brought more people. So it was a constant reminder over time of how great they were and their vision. And the same thing with anybody pitching investors. You're going to get a no on the first time. Keep those investors in the loop, the ones that resonate with you. If you meet somebody and they're a dick, just put them on your no list, right? You have a no list and have a yes list, and keep in contact with all the people that are on your yes list. Keep them, ask them for advice. There's a saying when you're raising capital: if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money.
Yes.
So, and with space, I think there's so many opportunities for, let's say beaming down power. So I know Japan's working on taking solar power and beaming it down as an energy source. There's asteroid mining, being able to mine asteroids for precious metals, being able to mine the moon for things like H3, hydrogen 3, where we can take that and we can power fusion reactors here on Earth there's enough helium-3 on the moon that we could then, power the Earth indefinitely with this power source, because it's a very, very high energy power source. So there's really, really amazing things. Do I think we should colonize Mars? Maybe in 100 years, maybe. We should work towards it, sure. I think we should put robots on there and maybe mine it and see what's there. And the trip back and forth is months, 8 months or something like that to go there. So I think, being rockets that use different fuel sources, that can use ion propulsion, there's different things. And all of those things that we research for space travel, which space is a pretty harsh, we can use here on Earth. GPS was developed by NASA, right? So there's a lot of cool technologies, material sciences, Kevlar was designed for the space program as well. There's a bunch of things that we will benefit as society by this. And I think one of the greatest things that the US ever did was they invested billions and billions of dollars in space and space exploration, also military, and they made those technologies that they invented public domain for US companies to use and leverage. This was genius, right? It was a really genius way of doing it. We're going to spend taxpayer money to develop new technologies, and then we're going to make that available to American companies. Genius. That, I think, is a really great way to do it. Now, things are changing, and more private companies are investing in space than public. So I think there's been a shift in that. And so are those private companies going to turn around and be benevolent and give those technologies to humanity? I don't know. I don't see Starlink being free anytime soon.
Got it.
It is a great service. Don't get me wrong. It can now put internet in places in the world where we never thought possible because running cables was prohibitively expensive. So now places in sub-Saharan Africa, as long as they have a solar panel that can power it, they can now have internet. So this is a game changer for the world. And this is only possible because of how much we've studied space and we've sent, satellites to space.
My last question to you, Alan, is if you were advising a CEO today, what's that one business challenge that they should prioritize solving to remain competitive in the next decade?
Mastering their own mind. The downfall of most startups has nothing to do with their product or their customers or anything. It has to do with ego.
Right.
When founders get together and their egos, and this has happened to me, and I've been guilty of it as well. I mean, my ego has definitely ruined businesses. I'm guilty of it. But I think being able to master your mind, being able to calm your mind in times of turmoil, because entrepreneurship is stressful. Every day there's ups and downs. Sometimes you're, all of a sudden you get paid from a client, and by the time you pay all your bills, you're negative again. Like that happens. You'll get paid and then you distribute all your funds and you're like, oh my God, we're broke again. And how are we going to get to the next paycheck? And these things happen. You have, customers that leave. You have employees that leave. You have people trying to steal things from you. If you build cool tech, everybody wants to steal it from you. So there's always a never-ending ups and downs. And I think the key to being successful over time is to realize that there's one rule in business. There's only one rule: never give up. And businesses will come and go. So when I say never give up, I don't mean don't give up on a business idea. If the business idea is not making money and it's miserable and it's making you unhappy, scrap it, move on to something else. But never give up. Start something else. Keep going. And I've had to reinvent myself a few times. I started off life as a molecular biologist. Then I became a DJ. Then we had a real estate holding company. Then we had a medical billing company. Then I was a pharmaceutical rep. Then I became a DJ again. And then I owned an AV company. And then we owned a technology company. And then we started Metaverse. And then my daughter started a shoe company. So we had to learn about the shoe industry. And then, and now we're building a new education system to teach entrepreneurs, because I have a long road of making a lot of mistakes. The number one thing I think is calm yourself, being able to take yourself down, calm yourself, be consistent over time, where, the high, when let's say you get $1 million contract, it's great. Celebrate it, enjoy it, but don't get too excited because the next day there's going to be a dip. Yeah. And don't get too upset when there's a dip. You know what I mean? The key is, no matter how up and down it goes, keep yourself as level as possible and don't let your ego get in the way of your decision making. That's a really pertinent advice.
Absolutely. That's the thought of the day. Thank you so much, Alan, for joining us on a podcast. I think, this would be a very insightful session with you. This will not only help technocrats, but will help startup founders who are building in various, technology related spaces. Plus will help a lot of consultants across the globe to understand the market, insights about technology.
Honor. Thank you so much for having me.